Farmer Dre back at it. Today we're standing out here in our blueberry patch, and today I'm going to explain to you guys the 5 biggest mistakes I did when we planted these blueberries. So this is part of the farm I don't really like to talk about too much because we done messed up when we planted these blueberries. And first mistake I did when we planted these blueberries is that I didn't do my research beforehand. And kind of to hit on that topic a little bit about the research about what crop we're going to do. You know, our first thing I should have done that I didn't know back then is that we need to, do the research to know what the plant requires, the blueberry plants. And now that I'm a senior in college and I studied horticulture, now I know what the blueberry plants need. But whenever, we planted these 4 years ago, I had no idea. So the first mistake we did is not doing our research on the specific crop. So as you guys can see here, our first frost came and they're starting to, go in dormancy. The Johnsongrass is starting to die off. And I guess the second biggest mistake we did when we planted these blueberries is that we spread turkey manure 2 years beforehand. And our property here, the 45 acres, we've never had an ounce of Johnsongrass on our farm. But since we bring in the infested turkey manure with the Johnsongrass, we bring in gobs of Johnsongrass here on our farm. And that's throughout the whole farm. There's Johnsongrass everywhere. And us not knowing what we wanted to do in this field, this used to be, it used to be back in the 1980s, it used to be all apples back here. And then the previous owner, he pushed down all the trees, and then he just let it sit as empty pasture. So whenever we came back, we sprayed turkey manure, on the whole entire field because we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do with it. And the reason we sprayed turkey manure, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, is because my dad wanted to make hay, and getting that manure on the field would make a good hay crop. So after we cut hay off after we spread it the next year, then I was like, you know what, Dad, let's plant some blueberries. And that was a great idea, we thought back then. So not knowing anything about blueberries in the soil and anything like that, we went ahead and planted the blueberries. So this whole entire block, or this whole entire strip back here we have of the blueberries is infested with Johnsongrass. And talking about Johnsongrass, it is a noxious weed in Missouri, in the state of Missouri. And I was talking to my weed ecology professor. She's a weed ecologist, and talking about Johnsongrass and how it works in the life cycle of it. And I asked her, so what's the best way to completely get rid of Johnsongrass? And she told me, there's not a real answer, but the best way to do it, and I know there's a lot of controversy going back and forth between this topic, is to use a systemic herbicide. And the systemic herbicide is whenever you spray it and it kills the roots and the whole entire foliage. And the best herbicide, believe it or not, to do that is Roundup. And I know there's a lot of controversy going around, about using Roundup in, fruits and vegetables and stuff. But, as you can see here, I didn't do anything about the Johnsongrass, on the herbicide standpoint. But we did come through and mulch it early on in the first few years. And I thought that I could smother out the Johnsongrass with mulch. So we put about, 8 to 10 inches of mulch on top of, right next to the blueberry plants to get them going. And those rhizomes from that Johnsongrass just grew on top of that mulch and just kept going. And for me, and on our farm here, I had no idea, what was going on. I was fresh out of high school at that time, and I was a kid full of passion and energy. So, we thought if we mulch it really hard, the weeds wouldn't grow. But as you guys can see here, there's a bunch of mulch still around the plants here. But the grass and the Johnsongrass and the dandelion and the plantains and all the other weeds grew on top of it and stuff. So, I think next year what I might do, I might mulch really thick. And if that Johnsongrass still goes through, I might just have to come through with some Roundup and kill it off. And one thing my professor did say about Johnsongrass itself is that it's not a one-time kill. You cannot just go out there and spray it one time. You got to consistently come out here and continue spraying it until until it actually dies off. And it takes anywhere from 1 to 3 years to finally kill all of those rhizomes from the Johnsongrass. So you have to kill it off. I know this is not a video about Johnsongrass, but this is the biggest, from a weed standpoint, that's our biggest pest here on the farm. And as you can see here, it's not the best looking out, but if I were to do something else different about whenever we do plant blueberries next time, I would use a landscaping fabric, kind of like we did on the blackberries, you know, to try to keep the weeds from growing right next to the plant. Because if the weeds are growing beside the plant, you can come through with a weed whacker or a zero turn and kind of cut the weeds along, or, you know, from the side of the rows. But if there's fabric right next to the plants, then you wouldn't have to fight, you know, the weeds and stuff next to it. So if I would plant blueberries again, and we probably will, I would use the landscaping fabric. So the third biggest mistake we did on blueberries is that we didn't pull any kind of supplemental irrigation. We just did kind of like a dry land blueberry crop here. And one thing we learned quickly is that blueberries require a lot of water. So we didn't pull any drip tape here, and I guess we can now, but we will next year. But, you know, whenever blueberry plants are small, they require a lot of water. And we had no idea that, you know, they require so much and they need so much, you know, the blueberries, in particular, the crop itself. So what we needed to have been doing is we had to connect we have a 250-gallon a tank that we connect behind the tractor in front of the skid steer, and come through and slowly dry the skid steer up and down the rows here, and, you know, water them. And it's a big pain in the butt. So thankfully this year we've already got, you know, close to 60 inches of rainfall so far for this year. Missouri gets, you know, around 44 inches of rainfall a year on average. So we get plenty of rainfall. But, you know, early on, if we have like a, you know, in 2018, how we had that long drought, you know, early on, that's when we needed to come out here. Whenever the plants, the berry plants produce, you know, the blueberries, they need a lot of water to size up. So it's just, you know, it's been a battle to, you know, to know exactly how and when to irrigate it and how much. So that's why the use of drip tape or drip tube, you know, the stuff that will last in the soil for at least 10 years, it's called the drip tube. Come through and put it out and then throw the mulch on top. So that's the third reason, that's the third biggest mistake we did whenever we planted these blueberries. So the fourth biggest mistake we did on these blueberries is not understanding, you know, the amount of soil pH, or not understanding how the plant itself works. So blueberries require a very low pH soil, and when I took my soils class 2 years ago, I took a free soil sample from here, and we did the whole process at school. So right here in this block in particular, the soil pH isn't too bad. It's about 6.2, but blueberries, they like a really acidic. So on blueberries, they need to be between 5.3 and 5.5. You know, in the low 5s is the best for blueberries. So us not knowing that, you know, we should have amended the soil before we planted. And for us, like I mentioned, we just came through and sprayed that turkey manure to cut hay off it. And then the next year, we just came through with the auger and made holes every 4 inches, or every 4 feet. Not 4 inches, what's wrong with me? It made holes every 4 feet, then we just planted them. So understanding how the plant works itself. So blueberries require very low pH soil, very acidic soils, and understanding that, you know, whenever your soil pH is so low that not all the nutrients are available to the plant. So getting nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus is pretty simple whenever you have, you know, they're available, you know, at pretty wide ranges. But then all the micronutrients, kind of like boron and zinc and stuff like that, is that's when it's very critical to have a low pH soil and understanding how those nutrients work. And I was talking to a grower up north. He's from the Kansas City area, and he does 4 acres of blueberries. So whenever he told me that, whenever he took a soil sample, he took a micronutrient soil sample, and the boron in his soil was at the right level. But then whenever he took a tissue sample, it was very deficient inside the plant itself. That means that the roots weren't taking up that boron inside the plant. So that's why knowing, you know, how the plant itself works and how the nutrients work, and what, you know, what level of pH the nutrients are taken up in the plant. So what the farmer needed to do is either had to, you know, adjust the pH a little higher so it won't be as low, so boron will be available to the plants, or just kind of add some more boron so it could be more readily available inside the soil there. And it's not about boron, it's about other nutrients. And for us, you know, not knowing anything about blueberries, after we added that turkey manure and planted them, I'm ashamed to say this, but we did absolutely no kind of fertilization to these. And it's sad to say now, because, you know, I'm a senior at Missouri State studying horticulture, and whenever people come out to our farm and look at my blueberries, you know, it's very sad. So for the past 3 years, I did absolutely nothing to these blueberries. So as you guys can see here, these are 4 years old, and they're about, you know, hip height, and they should have been, you know, about 5 or 6 foot tall, because these are a southern high bush blueberry. You know, they should have been, you know, that tall, but you know, you live and learn every day. So our fourth biggest mistake is we didn't understand how the soil works, how the plant responds to different pHs, and understanding the nutrient levels and how the plant works exactly. So the fifth biggest mistake we did is we picked varieties that don't really work well in our area. The varieties we did plant are Sweethearts, Elliots, and Patriots. And the Sweethearts are a very good blueberry. They're very sweet. It's just they're not very common, you know, for a commercial blueberry production. They're very good for a home gardener. But the Sweethearts, you know, like I mentioned, they're a good blueberry. It's just they don't put out the production, you know, that a farmer like me likes to see. And then the Sweethearts and the Patriots, the Elliots and Patriots, they're good variety as well. It's just they're not meant for like a commercial or a semi-commercial or for like a U-pick operation, because they don't produce that high yielding plant and that big old sweet berry. And now that I've been to, you know, the university, I've been going to school learning, and I've been to different blueberry conferences. I was one actually this past spring at it was the Missouri Blueberry School, and you know, after talking to the specialist and knowing what varieties and different stuff works for like a U-pick operation, like kind of like we are, then I finally realized how big of a mistake we did when we planted these varieties. And the reason we planted these varieties is we called up Stark Brothers Nursery. They're just a nursery out here from Louisiana, Missouri. And my dad talks to them on the phone, and they're like, oh yeah, if you order these varieties, they'll do good for you. So us not knowing anything about blueberries, like, okay, go ahead and send us 200 plants. So this is what we got here. We planted 200 plants here. They're 4 foot between each plant, and then there's 12 feet between each row here. And we only get 2 rows up and down, so we planted them. And you know, for how little we know, we're pretty fortunate that the blueberry plants are still alive. And we've already picked 2 crops off these. And you know, it's just like I'm telling you guys, you'll just live and learn. You know, if we would have never planted these blueberries, I would have never found out what works and doesn't work. But for now, you know, you just learn from your mistakes and keep going on. So what I'm gonna do in the next couple of days, I'm gonna come through and add some sulfur to the soil to lower that pH. And one thing you want to keep in mind on blueberries is that whenever your soil pH is so low, that aluminum can become toxic. So whenever people come out here and spray some aluminum sulfate, because like I mentioned, the toxic levels of aluminum whenever pH is so low. So whenever you grow blueberries, you want to apply granular sulfur, because then you don't get that aluminum toxicity to the plant, and it works, you know, pretty instantly. So what I gotta come through now is we took the soil test, and I gotta come through and sulfur the soil so the pH could drop, and then come through and amend it with the nitrogen and potassium, phosphorus levels that were recommended on the soil test. And hopefully there's still a chance for these blueberry plants to come back. You know, even though they're still growing nicely, it's just they should have been a lot bigger and taller. But it is what it is. Like I mentioned, you live and learn. And I'm kind of glad we did learn from this mistake we did, because in the next couple of years, we're going to plant another 2 acres of blueberries where these peach trees are right here. And now I know what to do beforehand and how to prepare the soil, and then, you know, what to do whenever the plants are growing. And one thing that is very good to do whenever you plant blueberries, and you know exactly what plot you're going to use and going to plant blueberries in, is to try to build up that organic matter in the soil. And one way to do that is either add wood chips or sawdust or anything to the soil and then incorporate it. Or you could do like a cover crop or just like a green manure. So what's common in our area is to use sorghum Sudan grass. And if you guys know what Sudan grass is, if you don't mow it in time, it grows 8 foot tall. But it's good because it adds a lot of biomass in the soil. So what you do with that Sudan grass is that you grow it to about 8 to 10 inches tall, and then you mow it down and just keep doing that, you know, all summer long. And it's an annual plant, and an annual plant is where you have to sow the seeds and it grows for one season, then it's done for. So you mow, and then after the season's over, then you disc everything up, let that, you know, Sudan grass decompose, and let that organic matter in the soil increase, and then you'll come back and plant it. And that's some of the things that I wish we should have done back here, but it is what it is. And hopefully there's still a chance for these blueberries to come back and recuperate, and hopefully, you know, they'll live for, you know, 30 to 40 years to come. But, you know, you learn from your mistakes and you just keep going on. You know, there's still a good fighting chance for these blueberries, but you just live and learn from your mistakes. Alrighty, y'all, that is going to be pretty much it for today. This video is kind of hard to make, you know, or even thinking about it, because I had this feeling that, you know, I had to show you guys the best parts of our farm on the YouTube channel, but then I came to the conclusion that if I don't share this information, how am I going to learn, and then how are you guys going to learn? So, you know, that's the 5 biggest mistakes we did here on the farm. So now I know exactly what to do in the future. So that is going to be pretty much it for today. If you guys haven't already, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'm going to try to answer them as good as I can and as quickly as possible. I've been really busy with school lately, so if I don't get right to it, you know, cut me some slack. And don't forget to hit that notification icon, because I'm coming to you guys 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I want to say thanks for watching up to this point. I hope you guys learned something. And like I said, if you guys have any better ideas or questions, leave them down in the comments. We'll see you next time, and you guys have a good day.